Hi, here's old Claude again, and I want to talk with you today about the importance of our testimony, keeping a record of it, because in Revelation, the 12th verse and 12th chapter and 11th verse, it speaks of the fact that believers then overcome the accuser of the brethren. They overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And this suggests, I think, that we ought to be keeping a record of the Lord's deliverances on our behalf. It becomes the rationale for our fighting the next battle. This is the way it was with David and Goliath. Whenever David went up to King Saul and was trying to give his rationale for fighting with Goliath when he was such a young man who didn't even have a suit of armor, he said that David said that he had overcome both the bear and the lion, and this became the foundation for Saul's believing that maybe he might have competence to deal with Goliath. Now, we need to keep a record of God's deliverances, both to encourage ourselves and for the sake of others. I don't know what this may mean to you, but I had a very practical deliverance in a wheat field when I had fallen from the bed of the old wheat truck down to the ground as a result of a stress fracture to my left femur. I had broken it when I was a fourth grader, and it broke again. It had been in the process of breaking, and it broke exactly in the same place where it had broken before. And so while I'm lying on the ground, the first thing I did was sing the doxology. Then the next thing I did was sing 4 verses of Amazing Grace, because I knew all 4 verses by memory. And then I prayed that my father-in-law would not be upset. I mean, he like many farmers in harvest, he was very excitable, but it was so neat the way when he came around completing the round and that load for the combine, and said, "Claude, what are you doing down on the ground?" And I said, I think I've got a broken leg." He said, "Okay." So what he did was simply, he came around. It was an old John Deere 55. He didn't have a cab on it, just had a canopy. And so he came around, and this was the load that from the combine that would complete the load that he was taking back to the farmhouse to bin. So he comes around, unloads stuff, the wheat from the combine, then backs the combine away, and then he backs the truck away from me. He could get the truck back a whole lot faster than he could driving the combine. So anyway, he backs the truck away. Then he took the canopy off of the combine and put it over me to block off the sun. And then he went into the house. So, it's almost 2 miles away. And and from there, they called the doctor. And the doctor came out in a station wagon. They didn't even, they didn't have any kind of an emergency vehicle in that day. But it was the doctor's own station wagon. And I remember he tried to blow up a splint, a balloon-like deal to put on my left leg, and that wouldn't work. And I said, "Why don't we just splint the broken leg to my good leg?" And so that worked, and it got me in. And in the emergency room, they were ready to cut off my trousers. And I said, "Well, hey, I think I can raise up enough. Let's just see if we can't slip those things off and save that money, Well, I'm just going, I'm going at length. I just love to tell that story, but far more instructive is the time when our son David was in a single vehicle accident. And I want to tell you about that sometime in an extended session. But Anita and I battled over him before we ever got to the hospital in Atlanta. And we felt like the battle was in the car. And so that becomes instructive. But you have your own testimony. And you need to see how God has delivered you in the past. And how he can deliver you in the future. Okay? One victory paves the way for another. And this is a rationale for your writing down what happens to you. On a given day, make a record of it. I've not been very good about that. Making a record from day to day. Sometimes I've thought I don't want to put down certain of my thoughts for folks to read in years to come. But maybe some of the things that are most troubling for us could be most helpful for others in the future. And we ought not be so concerned about making ourselves look so good. Okay? Let's just learn to be honest and forthright with others. And that paves the way for their being open and honest and forthright with us. And this is what the whole body of Christ needs, is openness and forthrightness with one another, and of course, with God. Blessings on you.